He's from an entrepreneurial family too. I should have told you that. His family had a couple of businesses on Gay Street. One a shoe store, Avalon shoe store, and another one. And so they were always involved in the entrepreneurial pursuits, and I think he just fell into that. He also was an athlete, so he was going to become famous one way or the other. He was a three-letter person, and he spent an enormous amount of time trying to perfect his skills as an athlete. And once he lost those, he then switched his focus to making sure that he had the intellectual ability to succeed. And so it's not a surprise when he put his mind to it that he was able to get into Harvard Law School. By the way, I did meet him again at Harvard. It's interesting. We had Dunbar High School, 1961 class, ended up with 2 students at Harvard Law School. Now that was unheard of. Nobody would have ever thought that that would have happened. But he got into Harvard Law School without having applied, because he was in a program. Clio, I think it was, read from Heber Smith, one of those programs, and they were so impressed with him that they suggested to him that he should go to Harvard, and he was allowed to go. So, very interesting guy.
Well, they've done on the right horse for sure.
Oh, no question. He also was the first African-American summer associate in Baltimore. He was with Piper and Marbury in 1967. And they offered him a job, but he didn't take it. He went to Paul Weiss in New York. And then he left there and set up his own shop, and then got into the leverage buyout calls, and then the interest.
This is the last question, but actually I want to ask you one more question. We just spent a day in Annapolis a couple of weeks ago and talking about the shifting of power away from Baltimore City towards Montgomery County and things. And it was briefly mentioned that the redistricting that took place here for Baltimore that lost the outlying counties into Baltimore City, and you were actually on the Court of Appeals and had to make that decision.
I wrote the opinion.
You wrote that opinion, right? And a lot of people were actually saying, well, it's going to go in front of Judge Bell, and he loves Baltimore City. He's going to make a decision that's going to benefit Baltimore City, and yet you decided that the law told you something differently. I'm just wondering if you talk, one, about that, and two, how you actually read the law and make decisions, how you keep out kind of your personal opinions, because everyone knows you love Baltimore, which made a decision that a lot of people thought hurt Baltimore, because you thought there's some other law that was higher than that.
Well, the law that's higher was the Constitution. It was pretty clear. We had started along that road back in every 10 years we do the redistricting, so that in 1990 I was on the court. 1992 was when the case was heard, the first redistricting case I was on. And Judge Murphy wrote the opinion. He pointed out at that time that there were more crossings of boundaries in that redistricting map than ever before. And he said, probably the first paragraph or so of the opinion, that this is getting to the end. This is getting to the limits of acceptability, and but this is all right. At that time, anybody who was following the court would have known that there were two people on board at that time who believed that those boundary crossings in that manner were too many. Judge Eldridge and me dissented from that decision. Because we read the Constitution as saying that this is the instances where the compactness and the districts being in one subdivision ought to exist. So when this other one came out, they increased the number of boundary, the crossing of boundaries, and so sharing districts. We then looked at it afresh, and the court was 6-1. The court was pretty much unanimous that that was too much. So not because it had anything to do with shifting the power at all. I mean, it had to do with trying to give effect to the one man, one vote concept, which is the law of the land, and the Maryland Constitution, which tells you how to draw districts. So to me, it was just a simple call. Read the law, apply it to the facts, and write the opinion. That's what we did. And that's what courts and judges are supposed to do, is to look at the law and make a decision based on that, as opposed to how one would like to see it come out. Now, I understand that we all have, when we come to the court, we all have our own little biases and whatnot, and we'll never be able to completely divorce those biases from the decisions we render. But one has to try mightily, and I think that we don't allow it to overtake the analysis that we've been taught to apply.
I guess it's just a coincidence in 2000 when 5 Republicans voted one way and the 4 Democrats voted the other way, right?
You see, now you're getting, I mean, maybe it's good you brought it up, because, the thing that really troubled me, and I'm real troubled with this, I mean, I'm scared to death about where we're going and how we're going to get there. I remember 2000, and I remember the coverage of the Gore against Bush, or Bush against Gore, I'm not sure which one it was. I remember the coverage of that. It was disturbing to me, because the coverage had nothing to do, the coverage didn't focus on the merits of the decision making that was going on. It focused on who appointed these folks, or what their political affiliation was. Now, there was a brief moment when I thought there was a hope. The Supreme Court had the case, and it was televised. And people saw how they approached it, listened to the questions that were being asked. And I thought the cover pretty good. People thought how age they were and how good the questions were. And then they rendered a decision. All of a sudden, they were back to talking about the party affiliation of the judges who were appointed. And then it goes to the Supreme Court and the same thing happens. Now, the thing that worries me about that is that the rule of law is the thing that separates us from every other system. If we got a good system, I mean, and we're unique. If we don't have it, then we're like everybody else. Everything's arbitrary, and you can just choose it. If what the reports are saying is true, that it depends upon no affiliation, we don't have rule of law. It really depends upon who's in power. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I disagree with a lot of decisions, but I am not yet at the point where I'm prepared to believe that judges come to the table with the idea that I'm going to apply my own ideology, notwithstanding what the law might say about it. I'm not prepared to believe that, because I'm not going to have the rule of law. The way we are looking at the legal profession and the judiciary I remind myself that lawyers for years, since the beginning of time, I suppose, have always been criticized. They've never been the most favored persons, I don't suppose, but it ebbs and it flows. I think we're in a flow period. And what worries me is if you can undermine the legitimacy of the legal profession, if you can marginalize lawyers, no telling where we'll end up as a society. Why do I say that? Two things I want to mention to you. Shakespeare, Henry VI. When we are in power, the wine is going to flow. Won't need any money, eat and drink on my tab. First thing we do, we kill all the lawyers. That speaks volumes to me. Because what the guy was saying is, it's so dangerous to have around if we're going to have a regime the way we want it. These folk are going to say it's wrong. These folk are going to be defending the rights of those folks that we're going to defend. Their best line of defense. Second point, and I have to thank Chief Judge Sweeney, who was the Chief Judge of the District Court for this. He was thinking about the Holocaust Museum was built and they had dedication. So he's over there and he began to think about how did this all happen? How did 6 million people get killed? How could a society that was a civilized society allow it to happen? So how could this happen? You know, a civilized society, democratic system, rule of law, theoretically, how could it happen? We didn't know, the General Judge said. You had to know. Everybody. And in fact, you guys applauded, defrocked the judges, Jewish lawyers, the Jewish lawyers. You had to know. Well, he said we were afraid. He had stood up and said something, the first atrocity, then perhaps he could have made a difference. He could have saved 6 million lives, he could have saved, and other systems. That's what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to speak power to people, speak truth to power. They're supposed to be the last line of defense. They're supposed to say it's wrong. They're supposed to say that's something that you can't do. And to the extent that we allow lawyers and the legal system to be marginalized, I am concerned about what the potential effect and result could be down the line, not tomorrow, maybe not 20 years from now, but at some point, if we marginalize it, if they have no connection to that history that has made the American lawyer effective, then our system will change. And we may end up with the rights that this country was founded on. So I'm really very concerned about that. I mean, the reason I'm concerned is because think of it. For the last several election cycles, what have we had? We've had lawyers, trial lawyers, being a part of the national campaign. And that's a big issue. Now, something wrong with that issue. Particularly when one looks at the fact that we're talking about 3 branches of government. Executive branch, legislative branch, both of which are very vocal, very known commodities, I should say. When you've got a judiciary, which is a rather silent, rather quiet branch, which does not speak very often about what it does and how it does and why. It is therefore the weakest branch of the 3 branches. No power in the first, no power in the second. public's trust and confidence. And if you can undermine the public's trust and confidence in it, and at the same time marginalize the officers of the court, what do you got in the way of protections? I mentioned the lawyers, but you can also think back on the road to the way in which the courts have been recently. One right here, judge makes a decision and there's an impeachment motion to get rid of the judge because the judge did the judge's job. He interpreted the law, whether you like it. So I'm concerned, so you got me started, so.
Well, the floor is now open for folks' questions, and please make sure you identify yourself. I saw 3 hands go up in a row, so I'm going to just take the 3 hands in this direction. So please. Let's remember to introduce ourselves to the judge when we have some questions.
Walt Pearson, Brown Capital Management.
Yes, sir.
And appreciate your comments. And you alluded to democratic and civilized society. You've seen the numbers, something like whether it's DC or Baltimore, urban America, 7 out of 10 black boys are not finishing high school. And I think New York Times, a recent article in Times said there's something, statistics along the lines of if they haven't finished high school, there's a 50% chance to end up incarcerated. That to me is genocide. We are a democratic society, civilized society. Where are our leaders, especially our black leaders? Why are we doing something like this?
Good question. I suggest that we do have political leadership out there, and we ought to be asking that very question of them. Because quite frankly, we are reactive. I'm reactive. Because we don't bring the cases, they come to us, we've got to resolve. But the political branches of government, legislative, executive branches, where the leadership is supposed to be, those are the kinds of questions we ought to be asking. Those are the kinds of questions that ought to be answered by them, and they ought to be held accountable. I don't see it being done either.
It was Omar and then Ken.
Omar Muhammad, Morgan State University.
That's my school, but
I had the opportunity to, I almost had an opportunity to meet Grace.
right.
I want to know from your conversations with them, and I want to know from you as well, to be the best that you that's out here. That's out here.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I guess for me, it goes back to the earliest teaching that I had about what was expected as a member of a race that was disadvantaged. I mean, that was instilled in me from day one. The people that I was dealing with early on. And as I've gone forward, I see the need to continue to along that path because I recognize that just as I was motivated by folks who came before me, I do have some responsibility to get back and do some motivation myself. And the best way to do it is by the actions that one takes, the achievements that one takes, because that then becomes an example or potential example for those folks who come after you, who are going to come in contact with you about you or somehow or another have some occasion to be in a position to know what you did and to aspire to do something beyond that. So I mean, it's almost a difficult thing to me. Well, I'll leave it at that. It goes back to my earliest teachings. It's hard to get away from.
Judge, who have been the maybe 2 or 3 attorneys that have presented before you in your courts?
You know, interesting. I remember he lost the case. Probably the most impressive, really. Might surprise you. He taught me at Harvard. The most impressive I ever saw in Philadelphia was Alan Dershowitz. He didn't try the case below. He was only there on the appeal. But I've never seen anybody who had as firm a grasp of the facts and who put into practice what we always teach, and that is that as you answer the question, you want to be moving forward to make your next point. He did that without any notes at all. It was just an incredible display, just to see him do that. And then there are some locals. Steve Sachs is not a bad advocate. And neither is Al Figinski. Al Figinski is very involved in what he's about, but Al Figinski is one of those who, like Dershowitz, is extremely well prepared and has anticipation, has the ability to anticipate what's going to be put to him and to respond. So often people don't answer questions. He'll answer them, but he'll also move his point forward. So, I mean, there are a number of them, but I mentioned those three.
Thank you, John.
Ward, Greg, and Lee.
Ward Morrow, American Federation of Government Employees. I'm thinking about the irony almost of your history, where the federal courts really were the ones that stepped in on a certain level where the state courts did not. Now we find with the FISA court and seeing a judge actually step that, a president apparently using civil disobedience on his own, whether you see a change in how civil disobedience may be working in this country, and whether there's a role now for state courts to step up and do what federal courts almost used to do.
Well, my thought is, and I'll only deal with the last thing you said. My thought is that the action really is on the state level and not at the federal level. And that's been the case for some time. You notice that there are a lot of state courts that are using their constitutions to make, for decision making as opposed to the federal constitution because it can be more liberal than the federal. And it's for that reason, and also you've got more range of subjects that you have to deal with at this level, and you can have a much greater impact. And I think, given the way the systems have evolved, that you'll find that the parochialism that you once had no longer exists. I think Brown's point has been made sufficiently that you don't have to worry about going back to that time when that parochialism will overtake and overshadow the legal precepts that should govern particular situation. That's why I would never even think of it. I think that's here, and that's where we need to make sure that the law is made and is maintained.
Greg, and Leon.
Greg Durward from the Maryland Transportation Authority and formerly the Maryland State Bar Association.
Yeah.
I want to first of all, make sure the class realizes that it's a known fact that we have by far the best dressed chief judge in America. Judge, if my math is correct, you're going to have 2 or 3 judges that are going to be forced to retire due to the mandatory retirement age of 70 on the Court of Appeals in the next year or 2.
18 months.
Obviously, you're paying attention to that.
Not really.
I was going to ask you, what effect is that going to have? 3 out of your 7 judges are going to. How is that going to change?
I don't know. I really don't know. We've got 3 very valuable judges we're going to be. I mean, they all are. I mean, Alan Wilmer's got a significant pedigree as an appellate judge at both levels. And before that, he has a significant history as a practitioner. Judge Raker has been a significant contributor in the State Attorney's Office before she became a judge, and she's been on our court, on the circuit court for a number of years, and is a senior judge right now on our court. And Judge Campbell of the Eastern Shore has served like I have at every level of the court. So he knows the whole system in and out. He's an expert on land. We're big on zoning and rule of against perpetuity, and that sort of stuff. We're going to miss them, no question about that. Now, how it's going to impact, I don't know, because a lot depends on who replaces each one of them. But I suspect that I should say this and say it very clearly. The court has been around longer than any other appellate court in the country. It will do fine, no matter who comes on, because I believe, I really firmly believe this, that the rule of law will prevail no matter who comes on. Now, you may end up having people think about, well, maybe the court's going to be more conservative, more liberal, more whatever it is. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, because when I look at how the court comes out, whether or not I agree with it, I am looking at how the court got to where it got, as opposed to trying to characterize the decision one way or another. So, I'm aware that they're leaving, and I'd hate to see them leave, but I think the court's going to be fine.
Thanks, Judge.
And I think we're doing pretty well here in Maryland. I mean, Macro's doing a great job, and I think...
Macro stands for, I should know, but it's just my
I don't know either, but...
a conflict
resolution office.
That's what the office, right? That's part of your judiciary.
Yeah, it is part of the judiciary, but I don't, those acronyms I don't deal with very well, but I use them, but I don't know the name. I don't know what to say. Well, Lorik Charkoudian is now very heavily involved, and she's isn't she in charge of the
State Association?
Right, and to the extent that we are able to put together a successful model, we can, I think, migrate it to the rest of the country. That's kind of macro. We've become a model for the rest of the country, and it's not me that's known so much, it's macro, it's Rachel that's known as a mover of data, and that's the way it ought to be. We stole, quite frankly, the concept from Ohio. And all we try to do is to improve upon it. And that's what we need to do here, is make sure that ours is the best it can be, and it will catch on.
Any quote you'd like?
No,
Laughter was really fitting for the group.
No, I happen to be. I'm really taken with the guy in the glass.
And you can be generic, it's not the glass.
No, it's the guy in the glass. It's written by an Eastern Shore person named Peter Dale Wimber. If you get what you want in your battles of health, and the world makes you king for a day, then go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that guy has to say. For it isn't your mother or father or wife whose judgment upon you must pass, the fellow who counts most in your life. He's the one who, please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear up to the end, and you've passed your most dangerous, difficult test. If the guy in the glass is your friend. You may be like Jack Horner and Chisholm Park. Think one guy. The guy in the glass says you're only a bum. You can't look him straight in the eye. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on your back as you pass. But your final reward will be heartaches and tears if you cheated the guy